Hey guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another Retro RPG. And at the end of another week, and the end of the last poll for a wee while, we've got a clear winner with the Neo-Anarchist Guide to Real Life for Shadowrun 1st Edition. Now I'll cover that in the desktop in a wee second, but as usual I'll be back at the end of the video with some other channel related stuff and some other poll related stuff. But a wee reminder first that if you'd like to help the channel out, or you'd like to see these videos a week early, then there's a Patreon down in the description below. So if you click on that, you can check it out. It'd be very much appreciated. But I hope to see you at the end of the video. So, this is the Neo-Anarchist Guide to Real Life. Now this came out in 1992, which puts it at the very tail end of Shadowrun 1st Edition's lifespan, because 2nd Edition Shadowrun came out also in 1992. And I actually had to look up the stats in here, the weapon stats, to work out whether this was 1st or 2nd Edition, because I couldn't quite remember. But it is in 1st Edition. Now, this is by Nigel D. Findlay, who sadly died only a few years later in 1995 at the very young age of 35 years. Nigel D. Findlay, in my opinion, is one of the finest role-playing writers who are out there. He just did such amazing stuff, and this is a real example of how good his stuff is. What it is a collection of articles about various elements of the Shadowrun world. Now, I've seen these kind of books before, and they are often pretty random, and I don't find them that useful, except this one, which is filled with really useful articles. This is a book which we dug out many times over the years, because it details how cred sticks work and how security systems work, and it gives you fashion for Shadowrun, and it tells you what the security on flights are and how flights work around the Shadowrun world. It just goes into all these details of things which your characters will encounter time and time again. It fleshes out such useful parts of the world. Hell, it even goes into a burger restaurant, McHugh's I think it's called, which is obviously a McDonald's ripoff, but detailing the security and pricing and this place where your characters will go in to grab a burger and things might happen. Burger restaurants have been a real thing in Shadowrun since the very first edition, the rulebook, where there was the Stuffer Shack fight, which was the example sort of combat playthrough to get you used to the rules. But this book does so much. Anyway, let's have a look at the back cover. The Neo-Anarchist Guide to Real Life. Grab the kids, hide the wife, the Neo-Anarchists are back. This time those fun-loving anarchists speak out on everything from transorbital travel and security systems to coffin motels and fast food. Nothing is sacred, profanity reigns, and there is more data than you can shake a chip at. The Neo-Anarchist Guide to Real Life provides useful information about the Shadowrun world in a fictionalized format, along with new specific game systems for each of the subjects covered. This sourcebook is compatible with the original Shadowrun rules, as well as the newly released Shadowrun 2nd Edition rules. They're compatible because the 2nd Edition rules have a conversion guide in them. Just a way of them not putting the book out of print. Anyway, inside, we have FASA's lovely desktop publishing quality. The artwork is great. The layout is really useful. As I've commented before, I love stuff like the introduction to Shadowland here, with as if you're logging into a database, and you can see all the different files, and the not available ones are books which are coming out. This is a way of advertising what's coming out soon for Shadowrun, what's come out, and of course the sections within this book that your character has downloaded. It's absolutely brilliant. I love it. So we start off with Finding Your Feet, where it goes through some details about Seattle from a tourist point of view. As I said, lovely artwork throughout. Then we're on to Security Blanket. And this chapter is about security systems, so it goes through all the details. You know, security system options, what different types of sensors, identity sensors, keypads, card readers. Now all of these are fairly familiar to us, but it's putting the security in place which would be around various places that Shadowrunners want to break into. Fingerprint scanners, voice recognition systems, door and window alarms. Really going into so much detail here. We've got cameras, door alarms, window alarms, laser systems, pressure detectors. vibration and air pressure detectors, going up to the very, very elite systems which the most expensive places will have. And then we've got active response measures, so containment responses, doors will lock and contain the threat. Neutralization responses. And then we've got a conclusion, sort of summing up all these, with lots and lots of comments from Shadowrunners, making it really part of the world. Then we're onto a section about semi-ballistic and orbital travel. So we've got suborbital shots, and we've got semi-ballistic ones. We can see how they go outside the atmosphere on the semi-ballistic, and it details things like semi-ballistic flights only have one attempt to land, because they are basically a missile coming in to land at the airport. If they mess it up, you're a goner. But we go into details about what happens to wizards, because magic in Shadowrun is based on the life force of the planet. So what happens when you're outside that life force? And it gives you a few suggestions in world. But suborbital travels, lots of interesting pictures of planes. This reminds me of a double-decker version of Concorde, almost like the A380 but a supersonic version. We go through stuff of price of tickets, your pilot and crew. Then we're on to killer accessories. So, fashionable weapons. Carrying a big bulky pistol is not cool, but carrying an elite styled weapon. The rich don't want to do that, or the rich would want to have fancy ones. Barton Arms gun cane. Rake or sting. And then we've got some colour plates showing fashion, because Shadowrun wasn't a particularly fashionable world. It was very utilitarian, whereas Cyberpunk is all about the style. Style over substance is the thing of Cyberpunk. And to a degree this brought it in, where your Shadowrunners who would normally just wear body armour and ordinary clothes, well, they're going to have to mix with rich people sometimes, so they're going to want to buy suits for dwarves. Going to have your orc in a very tidy business suit. Go through different styles here, including a fantastic image of a troll in a kilt. I totally appreciate that. Anyway, on the pages, we're back to these sort of fashionable weapons, and then we're into the fashion section. The fashion colour plates were just a couple of pages too soon. I would have preferred if they were just that one page later, so heading into this section, rather than breaking up the gun section. But we go through different fashion houses and different products they make. So we've got Mortimer's of London here, who produce the Great Coat, which is basically like the lined coat of the rules, but a wool fashionable version of it. And I really like that. I have to admit that most of my characters after this book came out wore greatcoats rather than lined coats. They were more expensive, but it describes them as it's more stylish and much warmer than my previously favoured duster, with much the same protection. So yes, stats-wise it's the same thing, except for price. But you can imagine your character just being that much cooler. So go through other things, social consequences of wearing different types of clothing, because if you're trying to gain access while wearing obvious armour and carrying obvious weapons, you're not going to get into the best places. Then we've got a chapter on Dockwagon. So, in Shadowrun, you will tend to have what's called a Dockwagon contract. A beeper on your wrist, a sort of cell phone which monitors your pulse, and if you are killed or in severe damage, it calls for the ambulance, which comes. And this goes through what sort of the history of the company, the contract levels. So your basic service, your gold service, your platinum service, right up to your super platinum service. How it calls for aid and what can stop that. The response. So when an ambulance comes, or if you're in real danger, they will send a highly armed response. Dockwagon clinics, so what kind of hospital you'll end up in. Then we've got Seattle on 30 new yen a night. And it details coffin motels, a really cheap place to stay, and it goes through what's in the individual coffins, what the hotels are like, a sample layout, the history of them, where you're just basically hiring a box big enough to lie in. Check-in procedures, the security. Then we're on to guarding the till, a section on what sensors are likely to be in shops. So we've got detection, weapon detectors, chemical detectors, alarms and responses. This is very much like the security section, but in more public areas. You know, what happens if you walk into a shopping mall with an assault rifle? And following up on that, again, fairly similar, eating fast and fearlessly. So it talks about McHugh's. It's got the layout of the restaurants, talks through the food, gives you a sample menu and the prices, talks about what security are available and what they do if somebody pulls a gun in a burger restaurant. And it talks about how, for a cheap place, they have absolutely excellent security. Got the conclusion there. Then we're on to home security, talking through what private companies will provide. Alarm design and installation, astral security, because of course magic exists in the Shadowrun world. Extended passive defenses, lethal force, going through all of the things here. Private security companies. We've got sharper image, so various technological items. We've got Whitelaw electric sunglasses, Screamer portable door alarms, private eye computer display glasses, phone secure scanners, lockouts, white noise generators, various items which your Shadowrunners might want or might come up against. Then we're on to a section about the Matrix, about one-way communication. So parts of the Matrix which, instead of being a two-way connection between two computers, they are only one way and will lock you in. Then we've got one of the fantastic sections, You Are Your Cred Stick, talking about how money is dealt with in the Shadowrun world. So we've got different types of cred sticks, how you use them, how you open bank accounts, just detailing things in the notes, how to transfer money between them. Very, very useful section. And then finally we're on to the rules section. So it's talking you through various elements which have come earlier, but laying out the rules for the Games Master. I also like the not in my game you won't archetypical Shadowrun Games Master with a player which is obviously super powered with their cybernetic implants and big guns, and the Games Master holding up in the background his rulebook going, nope. I do like that. It's comical, it's unlike Shadowrun often is, but I do appreciate it this once. So it goes through the items which we dealt with before, keypads, what the target numbers, and how to handle somebody trying to break a keypad, what anti-tamper systems exist, the same for card readers, print scanners, voice recognition systems, vibration systems, how to beat them and get around them, and how they work rules-wise. We've got planes and crews, so we go through the different types of aircraft you would likely travel around the world in. A standard pilot and flight attendant, the people who will be manning that vehicle. We've got weapon detections and how those work with the target numbers and modifiers. Different types of armoured clothing, so we can see there the Mortimer of London greatcoat with a ballistic of 4 and impact of 2, but it's slightly more expensive than the lined coat. We've got a dock wagon with their response teams and the different vehicles they use, whether they'll send a ground ambulance or they'll be sending something faster with different air units or different armed air units, their staff and how well armed some of them are, so threat support personnel, their modified city master, which is basically an armored personnel carrier that they use as an ambulance, their response times to different areas around Seattle, what help they can offer, the rules for it, and then we've got the rules for the coffin motels, the McHugh's, how to forge cred sticks and IDs, how using them, verification ratings, how tough they are, because security on a cred stick depends on how much money you're going to store in it. They won't let you store vast quantities on an unsecure cred stick. And the different levels, and that is it. So that was the Neo-Anarchist Guide to Real Life for Shadowrun 1st Edition. A really fantastic book if I haven't raved about it enough. There's things like the cred sticks, just useful. Because unlike Dungeons & Dragons, where you kill an opponent and you stick his gold pieces in your pouch and you've profited from it, in Shadowrun it's a digital world, so their money's still in their bank accounts. So gaining access and hacking into their cred sticks to transfer their money across, it's just really, really useful information for the players and Games Master to have. Things like flights, what security are on them. If your adventures aren't all taking place in the same city, they're going to want to get around. They'll probably want to fly from city to city or even country to country. So knowing how those flights work, the costs, what security's on them, what happens to magic in them, very, very useful indeed. McHugh's, fantastic little place to be able to pull on, where the players might want to meet a contact, know the security around, but it to be an innocuous, quiet place to meet up in the middle of the night, a 24-hour burger joint. And the fashions. In Shadowrun, where your characters just tended to be street scum, being able to fashion them up, give them expensive suits, give them a particular style, which you can image and see your character, just helps you roleplay so much more. Absolutely everything in that book's brilliant as far as I'm concerned. But it came first in the poll this week with 27%. But it was only narrowly ahead of the Chromebook 3, which came in on 25%. Now, for much of the week I wasn't sure which one was going to win. So I was researching that, reading through it again, and carrying the Chromebook 3 with me, which I was scanning through as well, because I wasn't sure whether it was going to turn out one way or the other. Also, the Psionics Handbook for Dungeons & Dragons 3rd Edition came on 23%, so very close behind. That had been very cool to cover. And the last two were Marienburg Sold Down the River for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay and Denizens of Earthdawn Volume 1 for Earthdawn, which came in on 14% and 11%. Now, that's the end of that poll. Now, normally I'd be issuing the next poll. But for the next month or so, I'm occupied at the weekends. I'm having to care for my elderly mother at weekends because her carers, my brother, are away. So I'm not available at the weekends. I'm not even at home at the weekends for basically the next month. So I'll be doing the videos, but other times in the week, whenever I can fit them in. So knowing what I'm doing next week is important to me now, rather than leaving it until the Friday and researching things the Friday night and recording the video on the Saturday. That's just not going to be possible, as I'm not going to be home on the Friday or the Saturday or the Sunday or the Monday, in fact. So for the next few weeks, I'm just going to work my way through a backlog of games which have been in the polls which didn't win. The core rulebooks. So on the Monday I can do the core rulebook, and on the Friday I can do the rules breakdown. And that'll be the two videos for the next weeks over the next month or so. And then at the end of that time, once I start to get time available again, once I'm back to my ordinary life, I'll start up the polls again. We'll start with the second shelf on the bookcase there, and we'll see what wins and have the randomness and chaos that we usually have. But anyway, I think I've whittled on for absolutely ages as usual. So thank you very, very much for watching. But as always, most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.